Yay. It's like watching my blood pressure. Welcome, everybody. Wow. Feel free to say where you're coming from on this TGIF Friday of a wonderful week of calm sessions. Welcome, everybody. Wow, 170. I'm just south of Seattle. Your lovely panelists are from the University of Michigan. Okay, I think we're pretty much leveling out-ish. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jerry Ventura, and I'll be moderating this session. I'm glad to welcome Richard Adler, Nabeela Jaffer, and Rachel Vacek, and they will be presenting From Siloed to Connected, using engagement as a means to improve the culture of a library division. Before we get started, let's go over a few logistical items. One, this session is being recorded. Captions are available during this session by clicking on the Live CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Thank you to Danielle Zioba for providing these. Please use the Q&A feature for any presentation questions that come to mind during the session. You can choose to do this anonymously. There will be 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please use the chat for general comments or technical issues. Rebecca Kuglich will be monitoring the chat for any questions and comments. Rebecca will also be adding some links into the chat, as she's doing right now. One is for collaborative resource sharing. If you can think of a related reading, podcast, video, or something else to this session, please add it to the Google Doc. Due to Google Docs limitations, we ask that you close out the document after you've added a resource. Rebecca's adding that link right now. And the next link is our conference code of conduct. Please review if you have not done so already this week. So I would like to introduce our panelist, Richard Adler, pronouns he, him, coordinator, Michigan Service Hub. You can see their loves. Nabeela Jaffer, welcome. She, her pronouns, program manager for strategic projects. And Rachel Vacek, she, her pronouns, head design and discovery. And their Twitter handles are at the bottom of the slide, and they'll also be at the very end with their email contacts. And if you, I'm sure you'll want to contact them after their wonderful session. So for now, I'm going to turn things over to your lovely presenters.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for the introduction. I'm going to go to the land acknowledgement. So the University of Michigan, named for Michigami, the world's largest freshwater system and located in the Huron River watershed, has origins through an 1817 land transfer from the Anishinaabe, the Council of Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi people. These people were traditionally the inhabitants and stewards of the region, along with their neighbors, the Seneca, Delaware, Shawnee, and Wyandot nations. We acknowledge that our university, at the University of Michigan, stands, like almost all property in the US, on lands obtained in unconscionable ways from Indigenous people. This acknowledgement does not absolve or diminish settler colonial privilege and violence. Instead, we must hold ourselves and our universities accountable in how we work, live, research, teach, learn, cultivate, recruit, etc. In this, we need to consider how the digital technologies that we use every day, their infrastructures, design, and environmental impact have been influenced by the legacy of colonialism and white supremacy. You can learn more about our federally recognized tribes within Michigan and the Indigenous people of Michigan on our research guide at these links. And there's some additional links on this page. So our goal today is to provide some context about our library environment and its culture, so you can understand why we have taken the path that we have. Want to highlight some of the activities we've accomplished that have provided a variety of opportunities for library employees to engage. And then we'll go over the successes, challenges, and provide you with some takeaways. We have a Zoom poll and 2 Padlet activities throughout our presentation today. And there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. Please engage in the chat throughout our presentation, as you have been doing throughout the entire CALM presentation, or the CALM conference. It's been really awesome to watch. So for some context, at the University of Michigan, it's a very big place. We're located in Ann Arbor. That's about an hour kind of west of Detroit and an hour north of Toledo. We have about 49,000 students and 19 different colleges that offer degree programs in approximately 250 disciplines. Within the library, we have about 420 employees, and the library is divided up to about 7 divisions plus Hadi Trust. Those 7 divisions include the Dean's Office, Collections, Learning and Teaching, Library Information Technology, which is the division that the 3 of us that are presenting today are in. Also Michigan Publishing, Operations and Research. So a little bit about the library culture. We have multiple communities of practice and interest groups throughout the library. They're focused on topics like assessment, art, gaming, sustainability, project management, library supervision, DEIA, change management, employee wellness. I could go on. We also have a Library Diversity Council that has been in existence since 1985. They focus on advocacy, education, and understanding various areas of diversity. We have a Librarians Forum Board, a Staff Forum Board. The librarians have also joined a union to secure collective bargaining rights within the university administration. Within the library, we also have lots of local, hybrid, and remote working options, which has been really great, especially, and some of these existed prior to the pandemic, and I continue to see them going forward. It's that way across all of campus, not just in the library. We have multiple types of spaces for individual and collaborative work. The library has also had several climate surveys about our experiences working in the library. The library also has multiple safe as well as brave space discussions about workplace climate, organizational culture, accountability, anti-racism, equity, and more. But I want to emphasize that even though this sounds great, like we're doing a lot of great things, our culture isn't perfect. No culture is. We're a big place with a lot of divisions and then multiple departments within those divisions, and sometimes multiple units within those departments. Because of that, there are a lot of silos and a lot of different cultures throughout the library. And though the library is committed to cultivating a positive workplace climate and a diverse and inclusive workplace community, it's as reflected in our values and strategic objectives, it can sometimes be really challenging to operate as one library and understand how best to bridge individual and collective experiences. Whew. So within the library, one of the divisions is the library IT division. Again, Nabeela, Rick, and I are all in this division. Within it, there are 5 departments totaling 56 people, plus an AUL and an administrative assistant. About 40 of those people are still working from home since the start of the pandemic, and many will likely continue to do so post-pandemic. And about 5 people live in other states and have been since before the pandemic. We have lots of teams within just our division. The culture team, which the 3 of us are a part of. There's also a tools team, technology steering team, a DEI team, a design system team, and several other teams that obviously work with projects and the ongoing work of the division. Within LIT, we've conducted climate surveys in the past, and we recently conducted a survey that aim to understand the impact of the culture team's work within our division. And Rick's going to talk a bit about that later. So a little bit of background about how the LIT culture team came into existence. So in 2016, there were multiple issues that were surfacing within LIT. There were people taking on more work than they could handle, the desire for more structure and project management, not enough communication around goals and direction, lack of transparency in how decisions are made, the need for more training opportunities, a lack of tools to support various types of things we were doing within the division. User experience and web accessibility weren't being incorporated early into projects. And there was just general unhappiness with sort of the siloed culture that we had. Many of these issues also made it difficult for the environment to be inclusive or welcoming. It was challenging for LIT employees, and especially for those who are from traditionally more marginalized backgrounds or have less access to information. Transparency and communication, providing clear expectations, and having good documentation are all extremely helpful in holding people accountable. A lack of clarity, rules, structure, and communication often leads to sexism, racism, heteronormative practices, and overall negative experiences for people. This is even more prevalent in an IT environment where the majority is white and male. I also want to acknowledge that library leadership, whether the head of a department or the dean of the library, often set the tone of, or at least should be held accountable for what happens within our library environments. Libraries have a tendency to throw teams at problems and hope that that will solve them. In most cases, that doesn't always work. In LIT, we recognize that improving the culture would take on multiple fronts with the help of the organizational development lead in the library, Jeff Witt, as well as help from the leadership, the department heads, the AUL, and all the members of LIT in general. But start somewhere, and a team like the culture team could really help address many of these issues and get us started. So culture is, an organization's culture is really complex and unique. It's made up of deeply seated values, beliefs, expectations, all of the things listed here on the screen. And these things are both conscious and unconscious, and they shape our individual employees' response to various situations. The health of a culture can greatly affect the organization's productivity and performance, as well as the happiness of its employees. So the larger library, meaning the UM library, not just our division, has been having a lot of conversations about fish, water, and groundwater. What, you ask? This model of looking at connections between workplace climate, organizational culture, and the influencers that can impact them all come from the Racial Equity Institute. We hope to begin exploring these concepts more within the context of our library's IT division. So the concept is the climate is about how people inside the organization are experiencing the work at any given moment. The focus is on the health of the fish. Excuse me. The water, or the organizational culture, is about the organizational identity. It includes the systems, processes, again, all those things on the previous slide, values and such. It's about how we do things within the organization. The focus is the health of the water. And then you have influencers, which is sort of the groundwater, the multiple sources of water that make up or flow into the water of an organization. Don't necessarily have control of the health of the water, but we can find ways to influence it. And I'm hoping that our culture team is a little bit like some of the groundwater. We're helping to improve some of the climate and some of the culture. So with all of that, the culture team has a charge, and it's focused on working with LIT to understand its culture, identify areas that would benefit from discussion or enhanced understanding. We plan a lot of programming to help enhance and support that culture. We collaborate with other teams within LIT and sometimes even with other groups in the library. We partner on maintaining documentation that is central to our division, and we advocate for adoption of recommended norms and practices. Some of the research I've looked at around organizational culture talks about how organizations group domain values such as cohesiveness, empowerment, participatory design making are likely to create an environment that fosters employee satisfaction. This is why so much of our charge is about working together, collaborating, partnering to try to understand how to make improvements, and why it's not just us doing our own thing. And why we did so many activities up front with LIT employees about how they wanted to, what they wanted to see the culture team do or focus on, what was really important to them. All of these activities helped focus LIT staff, helped LIT staff feel more invested in what we were planning and hoped to accomplish. So now we have a Zoom poll, and I believe Jerry or someone will be bringing that up. The question I have for the poll is, do you have a group in your library that specifically focuses on your library culture? So once the question is launched, it looks like it's launched. We're getting lots of responses. So far, I would say the majority is no. If you've answered sort of or to some extent, if you could put in the chat, that would be great. What is that group called, or what types of things are you doing that are addressing your library culture? Okay, the poll has slowed down. If you want to go ahead and show the results. So it looks like only 8 people, or 4%, said yes. Overwhelming majority, 152 out of 214, said no. And then there's a few that said sort of, a couple that are unsure. If you want to share in the chat, that would be great. And we can stop sharing the poll. If you want to close the poll. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Rick.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So now that we've talked about how the culture team came to be and some of the challenges that LIT was facing when the team was formed, we want to go over the programs and events that we put together to help to bring LIT closer to one another. The challenge from the start has been to serve a large IT division that has a number of people working on a variety of different projects. So we needed to come up with a mix of activities and events that we hoped would have something that appealed to everyone. We can move to the next slide, please. The first type of events were social events to bring people together in relaxed and informal ways. Before the pandemic, the culture team organized bowling nights and summer outings. So for example, each year in early summer, Ann Arbor has an outdoor movie and music series called Top of the Park. So during the time, the culture team would encourage everyone to go down there to get work one night and share in the experience. Once the pandemic set in, we turned to remote programs, online games, sharing Halloween costumes, trivia contests. We also had a related series of coffee breaks, and these actually turned out to be more successful during the pandemic. People found it easier to simply jump into a Zoom session for a half hour and chat without having to go to a physical space away from their workspace. So we kept up a regular schedule, a half hour each week, which we held at different days and times to accommodate everyone's schedule. Part of the fun of these breaks is that you never know who will show up. There are some regulars for sure, but a new person might show up and suddenly you're having a conversation among a combination of people who rarely get a chance to talk together. So these were especially good for occasions, especially good occasions for overcoming silos at a time when, thanks to the pandemic, silos were sort of becoming more present. The coffee breaks were an interesting case of something that was popular and enjoyed wide support, even though we tended to get only a small number of people showing up each time, usually just 3 to 6 people. Of course, if you're having an unstructured talk during a Zoom meeting, a smaller number is actually better. This is a point I'll come back to, though. The number of people who show up to an event is not always a reliable indicator of whether that event is working or not. It's also worth pointing out that bowling nights and get-togethers downtown weren't an option for anyone with family or other obligations. So while there was no real substitute for meeting in person, remote events have their upsides as well. Next slide, please. But we needed to do more than host purely social events. We also wanted to offer programs that would provide opportunities for training and learning that would benefit the work we do each day as an IT division. So the culture team offered workshops on user experience and analytics, web design, usability testing. In other words, areas that could be relevant to a number of different projects across the division. So again, you may have a limited number of people actually attending the workshop, but the benefits of their experience will be felt by many more. We've also had a series of knowledge sharing events that covered a variety of different topics. These are sort of in between. They're less formal than the workshops, but more structured than the coffee breaks. They would usually focus on lighter topics, but we still try to have them make some kind of connection to the work that we do. So for example, when we discovered that a couple of our colleagues had built their own computer keyboards, we gave them a chance to share what they had done and talk about the resources that are out there for anyone who would like to try building their own. And since we are, after all, in a library, we had a session on book arts, where one of our colleagues who has a hobby of bookbinding shared some of her projects and talked about her experience in making books as artistic expression. Another colleague who's had a lot of experience in program management and productivity talked about the culture of productivity and how discussions in that space often have unspoken biases and even assumptions that are toxic that we should be considering more carefully. And we had a session that gave everyone an opportunity to talk about interesting sessions that they had attended at remote conferences in the past year. Next slide, please. We've also had a series, actually, if you go back one. Yeah, there we go. The programming practice, great. We've also had a series called Programming Practice, which is an opportunity for developers to come together to practice basic skills. You could draw an analogy here with practicing a musical instrument or learning a physical art. Instead of pushing their skills to the limit or developing something new and advanced, everyone takes on a simple exercise, either working alone or with another developer, and tries to come up with their own solution and then talk about it with everyone else. It's a chance to get back to basics and hone one's skills by reconnecting with the foundations of software development. Another long-standing series has been our reading club. This began several years ago, and the articles and books we discussed had a focus on issues of diversity, bias, anti-racism, and toxicity in the workplace. The reading club met many times before the pandemic, and it wasn't unusual to have 30 or more people show up for the discussions, which were very engaged, and it seemed like most people were joining into them. In the past year, we kept those going at a slightly smaller pace, but we expanded the scope of the club to also include general technology issues as well. Next slide, please. The most important new series, one back, please. The DIA. Yeah, there we go. The most important new series that we introduced in the past year was our anti-racism DIA series. Now, this included 3 workshops and an external speaker. 3 members of the culture team, Ellen, Albert, and Jaimo, worked hard on preparing these events, and we were fortunate to have the help of Thomas Dickens, the library's diversity and inclusion specialist, for helping to guide 2 of the sessions and ensure that we maintained a safe space as we explored these sensitive issues. The reading club was especially helpful because it would meet shortly before workshop and help to introduce the topic. The DIA series introduced frameworks to help people identify problems of racism, and it tried to offer practical steps to help us respond to them. The feedback we received on the series was positive, so we count it as a success. But by the time we reached its conclusion, the culture team shared a sense that there was more that was needed. And this would eventually lead to the creation of a DIA team, which is something I'm going to come back to. If we go to the next slide. Yep. We also invited external speakers to come talk to us about projects that tied into the work we were doing at U of M. We had 2 notable events during the pandemic. Our first 2 speakers, Matt Schultz and Paul Gallagher, were instrumental in raising awareness of the need for digital preservation around the entire state of Michigan. And this led to the creation of the Michigan Digital Preservation Network. Now, that tied directly into work that we were doing at U of M on our own digital preservation projects. And that led to some crosstalk and discussion between these 2 initiatives. And as part of that anti-racism series I was talking about, we invited Aaron White of the Virginia Commonwealth University Libraries to talk to us about their work on trans-inclusive design, which sparked discussions about how we approach web design at U of M and how we could make our library systems more inclusive and acknowledge gender identity and expressions in the university community. Next slide, please. Very good. We also had events to encourage good work habits. Now, the first of these, and I suspect everyone listening can identify with this one, is the need for more and better documentation. We tried to think of ways to make writing up documentation slightly less painful. And one idea that we had before the pandemic was to offer movie and documentation sessions on Fridays during the summer. So LIT members would suggest and vote on a movie to show, and then we reserve a meeting room with a good-sized screen, and then we would have that playing in the background. And then with popcorn as a further temptation, we encouraged everyone who showed up to use that time on documentation for their projects. But to be fair, having a movie in the background worked better for some people than for others. So we had a related project called Dakatumi. And this was a half-day session, which could also be used to work on existing documentation. But we also encouraged teams to meet together and to discuss what kinds of documentation their projects might still need, and then collaborate on creating that documentation. So the culture team, we got involved in documentation too. In our case, for onboarding new employees. Like any university, the U of M can be a complicated place to adapt to, and we needed more robust documentation to help supervisors make sure that they were covering all the details. We also documented our buddy program, which provided a mentor for new employees to help them navigate through all of LIT's systems and traditions and culture, not to mention all the forms and everything else they would have to deal with. Onboarding documentation was another case of the culture team making improvements to something up to a certain point. One of our members, Marion, put a lot of time and effort into revising what LIT already had, but eventually it became clear that completing this project would have to be done by the division's supervisors group, because they had the experience and the practical knowledge that would be needed for the documentation to truly be useful. So we're in the process of passing the documentation along to them. So this is another point. Sometimes the culture team is an important step along the way. We're not always the final step. And finally, assessment. Coming up with these different programs and events was not easy, and anticipating which ideas would work and which would not was an ongoing challenge. So we sent out surveys, asking our colleagues if what we were doing was on the right track, and if there are other events and series that we should consider. So I'd like to pause here for a moment and ask all of you a question. We have a Padlet prepared for your responses, so if we can share that. If you want to share your responses in chat, that's perfectly fine too. So the question I have for you is, what types of activities do you or could you offer to enhance your own library's culture? And let's just take a moment to see what we get. Another mentor program. Coffee, always a winner. Food, yep, food and coffee. So I'm seeing some overlap here. I mean, obviously coffee breaks, reading groups. Snow angels, okay, very good. Oh yeah, pets, also very important. So actually, okay, we had 8 institutions that actually had culture teams, but we're seeing a lot of ideas that really sort of fall into the sort of things that we do. So this is fun. I don't actually want to bring this to a stop, but anyway. Okay, it looks like it might be slowing down a little bit. Field days, scholarship discussions, potlucks. Barn raising sessions for department projects like web design. Okay, that sounds like our Dakatumi project. Very good. Okay, so I think we've got a pretty good representation here. So let me move on to talking about successes. So the question of how successful we've been. There are a lot of ways to assess a culture team's mix of programs and events. And so I had to think for a little bit about what metrics would be most relevant. So if we go to the next slide, I ended up going with this set of results, which came from the survey that we sent out last year. Now, as I mentioned with our coffee breaks, raw numbers don't always tell the whole story. You can have an ongoing series that has a relatively small number of people showing up, but is still valued in the division, even by people who don't come to it. And this was a consistent response we had to our coffee breaks. People liked the fact that we offered them, even if they weren't able to join them regularly. So that's why I opted for this set of responses rather than raw numbers, getting the reactions of people to the things that we were doing. We had slightly more than half of the division responding here, and as you can see, we had some reasons to be pleased with how we were doing. There's obviously room for improvement, but mainly the main message we got was in the form of asking us to keep doing what we're doing, only do more of it. Now, of course, this set of respondents could be expected to be a bit self-selective. So this isn't a cause to be complacent, but I think this legitimately counts as a sign of success for what we were doing. If we could go to the next slide. And this pie chart as well. So we had 90% of respondents here saying that our efforts were having a positive or even an extremely positive impact. Again, self-selective, but no one was strongly motivated to say that we were on the wrong track. We had 0 responses saying that we were having a negative effect. So that was a good sign. Next slide, please. And again, assessment is not always a numbers game. Personal anecdotal responses can help quite a lot. And the examples here would give you some idea of what we saw from our surveys. People were acknowledging our success and helping the members of LIT come together, and that this was having a positive effect. And the variety of programs we were offering were touching a lot of areas in LIT, which is good to hear, considering that we were hoping not to leave anyone out. Plus, the workshops we offered were not only providing training, but also more opportunities to connect with colleagues. And it kind of comes down to the response in orange, talking about the fact that we're helping to boost morale, which is really what we were hoping to do, as well as helping to find an environment that could be more inclusive. Okay, so we go to the next slide. This brings me back to our DIA team. So our anti-racism series last year was a success up to a point, and the support we received from our library's HR was an important contributor to that success. And it's also important to note, as Rachel did, that the work we were doing was aligned with wider efforts in library to address concerns about racism and bias. The University of Michigan Library has had a Library Diversity Council since 1985, and it's very active. So the work we did and that the new DEIA team will do can complement the work of the LDC across the library. But DEIA issues can be complicated as they are important. And by the conclusion of our anti-racism series, we could see the need for a team that would be able to focus on these issues exclusively and also bring to them expertise and maybe also personal experience that could inform their efforts better than the members of the culture team could. The LIT, AUL, and the heads agreed, and this led to the creation of the new DIA team, which is really still in the process of sort of pulling together its agenda and deciding what they're going to do. Of course, we'll still work with that team and provide support for their programs and initiatives. But this is another example of how success for a culture team can sometimes mean identifying the need for another team and helping to bring that team about. Success does not always mean trying to do everything yourself. And so for that, I will turn things over to Nabeela.
Thank you, Rick. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so I will be talking about the challenges we experienced throughout our work in the culture team. And as you can imagine, there is Rick shared so many successes and the activities we did. So none of these come without challenges. Some of the challenges I would share here, and there were some other challenges as well along the way, but we tried to capture the bigger challenges we experienced. So the first one is the unclear scope. Although we have a charge and we had a charge even when the team started, but it's still when you create the charge, you put the items you can think of at that time. But with the changing needs and with the changing time, it happens that sometimes we were not really clear about who is responsible for like responding to the change in the division, or what is exactly the scope of our work? Is it more like we only identify what's the needs and then we take it to some other teams? How does that work? So we struggled with actually like what is our scope and what is out of scope for our team. That links with the lack of clarity around expectation of working with other teams. Like Rachel mentioned, we have several other teams like tech steering, a design systems team, now DEIA team. So we don't really want to step on their toes and do the work that they are already doing. So how do we stay connected with those teams, and how do we know, like, we cannot go and attend all their meetings? Is it the best way is to just look at their notes, or there should be communication line? So it's been a challenge when there are like so many other teams. There has been a challenge of how can we stay connected, and what is the expectation of staying connecting and doing the work that is connected with the other teams. Another challenge is lack of clarity about authority. how much this team has authority of making changes. When do we need to take it to the AUL? When do we need it to share with others, other managers, and how much of it can we do on our own? One another challenge that comes with the diversified needs, since we are a division of IT, we have developers, designers, managers, program managers, project managers, librarians. There are different skill sets. Whenever there's a variety of skill set, it always comes with different needs. So how do we cater all different needs? If we are offering an activity that is focused on dev needs, then are we excluding the managers, or are we excluding the designers? So we really had to be thoughtful, and we do try to be thoughtful about providing activities that is good and applicable to all different roles. At the same time, there is always a need for doing more activities that are focused on one type of a skill set. Most of these challenges were also amplified for us as a division with the multiple changes in our division leadership, and which led us to making assumptions about like support and advocacy, how much of it can we do on our own, how much we were in a wait state because of the changes in the division leadership. Next slide, please. As you can all imagine, pandemic has caused so many more challenges for everyone. It's almost feels like we have lived two lives as of now. One was pre-pandemic, and there was during pandemic, and now it's almost like a third life we are living post-pandemic, because we did not go back to pre-pandemic either, and we are coming out of pandemic. So now we are in a third phase of our life. Some of the challenges that were really faced by the pandemic was everything moved to remote, and that caused this thing that how do we change our programming? How do we change our communication? Because there was no organic communication of just standing by coffee machine and having those conversations. We had to think of different communication methods like Slack, emails, and started offering all the coffee breaks remotely over Zoom. That also caused the Zoom fatigue as well. So we really had to be careful of not providing too many opportunities where people are not really coming and they are feeling too much overwhelmed by the Zoom meetings. There was a freeze on funding as well. That did not help us thinking about providing more innovative ways of, or inviting any external guest speakers. So that was another challenge for us. And all these increased the siloed behavior. So our purpose was to be more collaborative and more engaged, but this pandemic actually made it worse for us. And of course, there was like lack of engagement, inspiration, enthusiasm, and we had to be careful about the burnout and exhaustion for everything going on in the world around us as well. And you can imagine when there's no food at events, who wants to go to those events? Next slide, please. Okay, we thought it would be helpful for us to share some of the takeaways that now we have learned over the years. And the first one is take the time that's necessary to assess needs. Like I mentioned, that our division is quite diversified in skill sets. So we really had to take that time, and we still do, like listen to colleagues, what is the need, and how can we understand the needs before we provide any of the programming. Keeping communication lines open, like different forms of communication. We have like a water cooler channel on Slack that is really helpful. People like to just talk about anything, everything over there. And there's like a culture team channel as well, but sometimes even having different channels and keeping an eye on those and being there in those channels helped as well. Leverage new connections with colleagues and find opportunities to work together. This was really easy to do when that was pre-pandemic time. During pandemic, like I mentioned, there weren't any much opportunities for organic communications. So still, we tried to keep up with our coffee breaks. That was really helpful because those were just informal half-an-hour coffee breaks. Whoever wants to come, just come in, drop by a little bit, or stay for the whole time. And those were very informal conversations. Conducting assessments and communicating results is really important in any of the team's work. And this goes along with like continuous improvement. And for culture team, I felt it was more important because the scope initially we felt was not really defined. So it was helpful to conduct the assessment and to see what is the scope, what comes under our purview, what are the things we can do. So doing those assessments really helped us think through and revise our charge as well. Next slide, please. It is important to think about. It's almost like stop and reflect on your work, on our work. So this is one thing we recently did. We revised our charge. The whole culture team met together and we reviewed the charge to see what are the things that are still relevant, what are the things we can improve on, what are the new things we can add, and what are the things we can stop. Like, for example, we stopped offering the movies and documentation because it felt like for majority of the people, they were not able to focus while watching a movie and doing the documentation. So it was nice to have that as a social event, but combining the two was actually proving to be a distraction. So we stopped doing that. Instead, we provided doing the documentation opportunity in a different way. Getting buy-in and support from leadership is something we learned is very, very important because unless we have that leads to the challenge of not clarifying and not clarity around the authority, like how much work can we do? We can do all the assessments, we can provide the results, but when it comes to implementation, if we do not have that authority and if we do not have that buy-in, then it's hard for us to do that work. And I already shared that define and regularly revisit the charge and the scope of your team is helpful. The last takeaway is that also thinking about that and recognizing that working in silos might not be a bad thing. Our focus was really breaking the silos into more engaged environment, and but we realized that some people like to work in the silo because it's needed. They need that time to do that. So it's okay for them to do that. But the main concern we had was like that we wanted to provide connections. Even when people are working in silos, it is helpful for them to know that they are connected to others. So this is what we learned, that it doesn't have to be all the time very engaged environment, but as long as they are forming connections and it's connected, that is really helpful. Next slide, please. Okay. So those were the takeaways and all the challenges we faced. We have a question here, and we would like you to engage with this question on the Padlet. The question is, what is a next step you or your team could take to improve the equity, engagement, and overall health of your library culture? So let's go to the Padlet and please post anything you can think of. Okay. Propose no meeting parts of the semester and year. Yeah, I mean, we have had some units, they have no meetings Mondays, or like just put one day as no meetings. I see around clarity, I see around climate surveys. Hire more staff. You always need to hire more people. That is always very important. Okay, self-care it is really important. Yeah, we also had some activities and programming around the self-care and health that's something we are still thinking of even now. In one of our recent meetings, we discussed that. Yeah, I like that. Take the time to greet coworkers and get to know them all by their names. This is so much easier when you are in person. In this during pandemic time, it wasn't that easy, but hopefully now, after post-pandemic, we would be able to do that better. Although learning everyone's name is so much easier on Zoom because everyone's name is there with their picture, so that helped too. Yeah, and I would invite Rachel and Richard also, if you see something on the board that you feel is worth calling out, or you have any thoughts, please pitch in.
I think we had a question about the no meeting days, and those are library wide. So that eases the issue of, you know, if LIT was going to do no meeting as alone, we might have difficulty with coordinating with other members, but the entire library does that. So.
Oh yeah, so those are like the focus days, and they happen. Are they like every 2 or 3 months?
I think there's one a month, like on the 22nd.
Yeah, it's either the 22nd or 23rd of the month. Yeah. And if it falls on a Saturday, the focus day is on a Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, focus day is on a Monday. And it changes obviously every month because people, you know, different people have different schedules. And HR had written up some documentation about it, and they send that out in the library newsletter on the Friday before before the focus day happens. And it's pretty widely respected. The administration has set a good model for them not having meetings on those days. So it's been helpful.
I don't want to jump around. We got a lot of questions here, but one did kind of jump out at me. Someone was asking, you know, you're a large institution. What if you're a smaller institution trying to do this sort of work? How could you prioritize? And the thought that immediately came to mind was start with the coffee breaks, because the coffee breaks really don't require any preparation. If you can set up a Zoom meeting with colleagues, it sort of runs itself. And if you have a small number of people showing up, that's great, because, you know, having 20 people showing up for coffee break in an unstructured conversation, it's just not going to work as well. So whether you're meeting in person or whether you're meeting online actually is a little bit easier, I think, for people who are busy. That's probably a good place to start. And I think you could probably get, you know, make a fair amount of progress of just sort of bringing people together in interesting combinations just from doing that. And then maybe you could build out from that depending on what your resources allow.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And really thank you everyone for putting all these comments in Padlet. Would love to go back to the Padlet and read all those comments later. I really appreciate it. So that was the end of our presentation, and I will hand it over to Rebecca for the Q&A section. Thanks, everyone.
Actually, it's Jerry.
Sorry, Jerry.
Rebecca is our amazing tech person. Let's start from the top. Are there culture teams in other divisions? If so, what do those look like and how are they doing?
I could take this one, but yeah, Nabeela or Rick, if you want to add anything. We've given a much smaller version of this presentation within the library, and we've gotten approached by 2 other divisions, like, what is this culture team thing you speak of? And so, you know, I've kind of given the spiel about what we do, the challenges we have, the types of programming we offer. Some of the other divisions are smaller than we are. They have, you know, less than 56 people. Some of the divisions are twice our size, like the collections division. So I guess the answer is, what do those look like? Some of them are still getting started, and some of them are just a group of people within their division that maybe they don't have as many teams as we do. So maybe they're combining DEIA as well as other cultural aspects, but they're still thinking about bringing in programming or like speakers to help with programming, or collaborating with the DEIA coordinators in the library and having discussions or things like that.
Another one related to size. How do you think the size of an organization impacts engagement? What strategies did you employ to account for being a large decentralized organization?
I could take this one. I mean, it kind of relates to what I was saying before. If you have a large organization, you have a greater challenge because you're probably going to have a larger number of people to engage with who may be doing very different things. On the other hand, you will have, one hopes, more people to bring to bear on it, and you're going to have more resources to draw on. So in our case, the fact that we had an HR department that was very much engaged with this work was really a help, especially when we were addressing things in the anti-racism series. I think when you're dealing with a large decentralized organization, I think you have to try to go for variety. Different people are going to have different skill sets, different focuses for their jobs, and you have to come at it with the idea that we're going to try to do different kinds of things. Some events are going to focus more on developers. Other ones are going to focus more on people who may be engaged with a particular type of project. The more variety that you can bring to bear, the more likely it is that you're going to try to include everybody in there. And you can, one hopes, rely on surveys to let people to get people's reactions to how well you're doing. The other thing to bear in mind is to make sure that you schedule things at different parts of the day or different days, because obviously people have different schedules as well.
Do you have a link to the documentation for your buddy program?
Maybe it's in our Confluence, which is an internal wiki-like thing. I'd probably have to copy and paste it and put it in a Google Doc and share. I can make a note to do that after the meeting, but I'm not sure where to put it.
And it's very much a work in progress, which is why we were handing it off. So, but yeah.
Okay. Or Rachel, Nabeela, and Richard's contact information is at the end of the slide deck. Can you share the survey questions you sent in fiscal year 21 as seen on the impact slide?
That I probably could, because I believe those are in a Google Doc.
Yep.
How much staff time per week or month do you devote to the culture team?
We meet twice, roughly about twice a month, every other week for an hour. And it varies depending on what the project is. Usually we have one person who runs a particular series. And so the amount of preparation time for a given event could vary. A lot of what we do, like the programming practice series, requires a little bit more preparation time to come up with an exercise for people to work on. Other ones, like I say, the coffee breaks, we sort of split those up among all of us, and it's basically just show up for a half hour and sort of gently moderate the discussion, sort of come up with things to say to kind of keep things going, minimize the awkward pauses. That's kind of the main goal. So it's 2 hours of meetings a month, and then depending on level of engagement that people have for doing individual projects.
With the chair of having more responsibility and time commitment.
This is true.
What were the demographics of the culture team?
So far we've had 5 people at a time. We've had several people rotate on and off. We're right now, I think we represent 3 different departments of the 5 within the division. I don't know, anything else you want to add, Rick or Nabeela?
Yeah, just trying to get someone for every department within division if possible, but it depends on people's availability.
You've talked about the work of multiple teams. How does your library value and evaluate individual contributions to this work? For example, is the planning involved in coffee breaks, film viewings, etc., considered, quote, service? Is there an expectation that team members will devote a specific amount of time to this work each week?
Yeah, I can take that question. Yes, to the first question, that yeah, and anything you are involved in planning, it is kind of considered as service to that team. And the expectation is when the charge is made at that time, it is shared with the department heads with the expectation that to encourage their people in their teams, and the expectation is explicitly defined that it's going to take like 1 to 2 hours per week or per month kind of a thing. So it's not like mandatory, but it's more like encouraged kind of a thing.
Okay, early in the presentation, you mentioned a challenge that people were taking on more work than they could handle. Have there been efforts to address workload capacity along with the development of social activities, learning opportunities, etc.?
I'd say yes, to some degree. This has been, I'd still say it's an ongoing challenge, and it's not something that necessarily our culture team can fully address. Obviously, if you feel overwhelmed with work, you're probably not going to take the time to go to a coffee break or a session on something that's interesting but not directly related to your work. So we've done some work. I'm a department head within the division, and so I know the department heads have done a lot of work in trying to look at the sort of operational and project time that our staff have, and to make sure that people are not overburdened, overworked. So when we get to the time when we're scheduling projects for a particular semester or cycle, that no one is overburdened and that they still have the opportunities to engage in these types of activities, which really enrich your sort of work experience. We feel that like professional development is important, social engagement is important, and just taking care of yourself is important. And so trying to find that balance between like getting the work done and taking care of yourself, we try to, I guess, set the tone in the division. So are things better? I'd say yes. Are they perfect? No. Do you want to add anything, Rick or Nabeela?
No, I think that covers it.
Here's a hot question from the chat. People were talking about non-meeting days. We've got like a couple of minutes left. Is there any documentation or messaging you can share, the official stuff about these non-meeting days? We tried that at my peer org and it didn't go anywhere. I'd love to steal from what worked at UM.
That is a documentation that I believe was written from HR in collaboration with the administration and several, I guess, representatives from the library. And they've been adjusting it as we went along, but we've been using kind of the same practice of focus days for over a year now. It started during the pandemic. I might be able to share that. It's in our library intranet. I would have to copy and paste it into a Google Doc. And maybe I can talk with the Calm moderators after the session to figure out like, where do I post the links to all of these Google Docs that need to be shared with people?
I apologize to all of you who asked questions that we didn't get to. You can contact Richard, Nabeela, and Rachel directly at their contacts at the end of the slide deck. Thank you so much, Richard, Nabeela, and Rachel, for answering all these questions and for the amazing presentation. So many ideas. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And before we close the session, remember to fill out the evaluation survey. Let Richard, Nabeela, and Rachel know exactly what you loved about this presentation. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.